Story time about how my boyfriend and best friend were sneaking around behind my back. So a little background information, I was 15 and in 10th grade. So my mom and dad were split up and I was pretty much allowed to do whatever I wanted because of that. So I was dating this boy named Jacob. Well, my best friend Alice literally hated him. Like low-key, every once in a while, she would try to break him and I up. And when I would call her out on it, she would just deny it. Anyway, so the one day I didn't go to school because I was super sick. So the whole day I was trying to text Jacob and Allison, but nobody was answering me. Which was extremely weird because no matter what, Allison would always text me back. So after I knew the school ended, I went to Allison's house. Nobody was answering the door, so I used the spare key. I walk in and all I hear is a very loud banging coming from her bedroom. So I walk in, I see my boyfriend and her together, and then he starts saying that she drugged him. So I went on his phone, I see a bunch of old text messages between him and her, and them exchanging pictures. And then sis wants to start giving me an attitude, so I punched her in the face, and then I left and I don't talk to either of them. Storytime about my extremely creepy neighbors. So a little background information, I was 12 years old and I was in 6th grade. And my family and I lived in a really small town where everyone knew everyone. But our new neighbors had been building their house next to us for the past 4 years. And finally when they were done with the house, this house was huge. I mean, probably because there were like 8 people moving into the house. There was the mom, the dad, 4 kids, and their grandparents. So like 8 people. But I was super excited because I was like, okay, this is awesome. I get to meet some new friends. But after 2 weeks of not seeing anybody playing in the backyard or anybody on the school bus, I started to think that their family was super fucking weird. And everyone in our neighborhood liked to gossip, and everyone was saying how they barely see the people who had just moved in. So my mom decided to take one for the team and make some brownies, take them over to the house, and I ended up going with her. So we go up to the house, we knock on the door, and one of the kids came and opened the door, but the dad ran over and grabbed him. Like for part 2. Part 2 about my extremely creepy neighbors. So like I said, my mom and I took some brownies over there and one of the kids opened the door, and when he opened the door, he had a bunch of bruises all over his body. The dad came running over and ripped his son from the door and slammed the door in our faces, and all you could hear was him screaming at his son. So my mom and I went to walk away before the door opened, and he was like, sorry, my son knows better than to open the door to strangers. So he took the brownies, and then I asked him if I could have a sleepover with one of his daughters, and he was super hesitant at first, but he said that I could only have a sleepover with her if it was at my house and not theirs, which my mom was completely fine with anyways because she thought that it was a little bit weird that his son had bruises covering his whole body. So that night when she came over to sleep over my house, I asked her how her brother got all those bruises all over his body, and she said that he just fell down some stairs. But after that we became best friends, and we would literally hang out like 5 times a week until the one day I knocked on their door to ask if she wanted to come over, and her dad answered the door and said that she was gone. Like for part 3. Part 3 about my super creepy neighbors. So like I said, I became best friends with their daughter, but the one day I went over her house to ask if she wanted to come over, and her dad answered the door and said that she was gone. And when I asked when she would be back, he was like, she went to go live with her mom, so probably never. Which was super weird because she never mentioned that she had another mom. So fast forward 2 months, my family and I are sitting around the fire pit when we hear someone scream help. But we weren't sure if that's what we were actually hearing because it was so quiet, and then all of a sudden we heard someone banging on my neighbor's basement door. You know those metal doors that people usually have outside of their house that lead down basement steps? Yeah, well that's where the banging was coming from. So my dad hopped over the fence to see if that's where the screaming was coming from also. And then not even a minute later, my dad hopped back over the fence and it looked like he saw a ghost, but he ran inside, called 911. Because I was so young, the only thing my parents told me about that whole situation was that the girl that I was friends with was still alive and her parents were keeping her in the basement along with 2 of her other siblings. But then we also found out that they weren't even her real parents. They were kidnapped at the hospital when they were born.
I had a crush on my brother's best friend. We're gonna call him Pedro. One day, my brother and Pedro had a plan to go to the beach together, and then Pedro invited me. And I was like, let me check if I have something to do. I don't. I'm going. I'm gonna go, Pedro. Don't worry. The night before, I was like, I need to look scandalous. Like, so scandalous. So I remember I wore this 2-piece bathing suit. So long story short, the day came and we went to the beach. So we get to the water and immediately I go in. I wanted to show him, like, I'm a bra girl. Oh, this is the best part. So I'm coming out of the water and I'm trying to look like a baddie. Like, I'm trying to walk out all cute, like the hair is wet and everything. And I noticed Pedro was looking at my legs. So I was like, maybe he's trying to shoot his shot. So I went to go tell him something. And I was like, why do you keep looking at me? And he was like, look at your legs. I look at my legs. There's a whole ass piece of poop from the beach water.
Story time about when I lost my virginity to a water slide. So, do you guys know those water slides that you stand in and then they suddenly drop you straight down onto the water slide? If not, look them up on YouTube. There's nothing like them. Ah, yes, the sweet memories of my first time on one of these. I feel that my mental and emotional scars have healed enough to tell this gem. At the time, my girlfriend, now fiance, worked as a photographer for one of those resorts with the indoor and outdoor water parks. One of her perks was that her and a family member or friend could get into the water park for free. So one hot summer day she had off, we both decided it'd be fun to go there and cool down for the day. While we were there, I discovered one of their most thrilling looking water slides. Basically, you stand in this tube and then the slide operator presses a button and the slide drops you straight down like 90 feet before you actually start going down the water slide. Me, being a thrill seeker, of course, had to try it. So I made a great climb up to the top of the slide, stood in line, and finally it was my turn. Once I got in the tube, the operator told me to keep my legs crossed. Now I'm a pretty big, heavy guy, so I was like, that's uncomfortable as fuck. I'm not doing that. So there I was, standing in the tube, having a panic attack from anticipation, with my legs not crossed. The operator finally presses the button and the bottom opens and I fall straight down the water slide. Very quickly I realized why they have you cross your legs. Water shot so far up my ass, so fast, I swear I tasted it in my mouth. My body raced down that slide as I questioned every life choice I had ever made. Once I made it down to the bottom, I sat there for a moment, absolutely violated. I felt like someone in an old episode of Law & Order, Special Victims Unit. I built up the courage to finally stand up, and all I could feel was a nice warm stream of water mixed with shit, and maybe a little bit of blood shoot out of my ass faster than a steamboat geyser at Yellowstone National Park. I quickly got off the slide and ran to the bathroom with a trail of shitty water tailing me as the slide operator stared in awe. They had to shut down the slide for the rest of the day, but man was my asshole clean after that.
I was in class on Zoom. I wanted to go to sleep, honestly, because like when I'm tired, I go to sleep. I end up falling asleep and then class ends and everyone starts leaving the class. Except me, because I was like in a whole other universe at this point. I was dreaming, I was flying. At this point, me and the teacher are alone in the call. This is the best part. Then the teacher starts talking to me and he's like, Samantha, wake up. Samantha, please. Samantha, you have another class. He woke me up, but I was half awake, so I didn't really know what was going on. So I thought it was my brother waking me up, and I straight up yelled. I was like, shut up, you fat booger. And so then I realized, oh shit, I just called my teacher a fat booger. And now he scheduled a parent conference. I'm going on Monday, so I'm really excited.
To anyone who gets a period, this video is for us. When I was in middle school, I really appreciated this teacher who would let the girls go to the bathroom whenever we wanted. And the guys would complain that they had to wait 20 minutes at least after lunch so that they could use the restroom. And the teacher would always remind them, you guys are boys and these are young ladies and they don't always have to just relieve themselves in the restroom. And I didn't even realize that that was just basic human decency for people who have periods until I got to high school. When I was a junior in high school, I was sitting in class and I felt like I was bleeding. And so I told my teacher that I had to use the restroom. And he told me I couldn't go because it was the first 15 minutes of class. And I told him, it's an emergency. I really have to use the restroom. And he said, you should have thought about that at lunch. And because I'm not going to sit here and bleed through my pants, I was like, I'm menstruating really loud in front of the whole class. And he was shocked and so uncomfortable. He started doing that thing where he tries to laugh like, in all my 20 years of teaching, no one has ever told me that. And I just sat there and wondered how many girls before me had to sit in their own blood.